The stuff that was playing in the background as you were eating your pizzas and pre-chatting were the two reels of kind of my work previous to VR. So stuff that I used to do in motion design, in live action, etc. My background is diverse and mostly based in kind of film and design areas. I studied graphic design, mastered in interactive, did web design for probably 7 years, then did animation, motion graphics, stuff like that. Taught at the university for a while, then realized that's not for me. Opened my own studio in Istanbul, Turkey, ran it for 10 years. That was a lot of fun. That was one of the reels, the more colorful ones. Then got picked up by a studio from San Francisco, moved to the Bay Area and worked as a creative director at that studio called Autofast and Bot and Dolly. We did some crazy stuff. Our claim to fame was buying out decommissioned robots from Detroit and hacking them to use with Autodesk Maya, so that our animators who knew how to use camera in Maya were operating those 20-ton gigantic robots as motion control units. Those are the same robots we used to film movies like Gravity. If you think of all this live action in Gravity that was shot in our equipment with our teams, etc. After several successful campaigns, we got noticed by Google, and when you're in the Bay Area and you get noticed by Google, you get bought by Google. So I became creative director at Google, and I worked in there with the Tango team, with the Cardboard team, with Google Jump. I helped those guys build their camera, etc. Around a year ago or so, I realized that Google, as fantastic a company as it is not the best place for a creative person, or at least art kind of directed creative person. I realized definitely working there that engineers are creative people and should not be considered as a different category. But I quit Google, returned to the old school freelancing, and right now I work as a freelance creative director, working for various companies in this area, in LA, in Bay, basically. Whoever needs cool ideas and a person with tons of experience gives me a call, and most likely I work with them. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the title of today's presentation. It's obviously a clickbait, right? I mean, 13 predictions for the future of VR and how to succeed without even trying is something that I jokingly suggested to the organizers as a title that if any of you ever hear somebody say that to you, you should just run, okay? What my talk is really about is, I think about the nature of experimentation and the spirit of the new frontier that VR is. Now, VR, this as a discipline, you know, you can trace it to the first incarnation that happened 20 years ago and failed, or to the earlier experiments, but like the thing that we're experiencing right now, this huge movement, the media attention, etc. I mean, it's super young. It's so young and fresh that nobody really out there has the right at this point to call themselves an expert. And we're all new to this, we're all learning. Every project that every person is doing is a new experience and has tons to you know, address and learn from. And honestly, I'm very surprised to see, you know, schools of VR popping up around, and you know, institutes and people charging money to teach you VR. In my opinion, like the best thing you can do if you want to learn that or if you want to deepen your knowledge is to simply do cool stuff. Just, you know, the barrier of entry is as low as it can be. And what I wanted to show you today is basically some of the stuff I've been doing and what I learned doing it and why I set up the challenges I set, etc. And if somebody tells you they have 13 projections for the future, take it with a grain of salt, because your opinion is probably as valid as theirs. So, as usual, my talks are very unrehearsed and chaotic typically. So I need to warn you about that. And if you see me just veering way off the track and digressing and going into some anecdote of an anecdote, just like throw something at me or shout or whistle. I've been giving 30 minutes and I probably already burned like 10% of that budget. So, yes, my notes are on this paper and I have some stuff in a folder here, so let's see. All right, how did I start with VR? This is actually a really weird thing. Let's see if the computer will collaborate. Yeah, so I was working at Autofast and we just got bought by Google. And for the previous 2 years or so, we've been doing this ads for the Nexus phones. I don't know how familiar you are with the Android ecosystem, but if you ever seen an ad for Nexus 7, 5, or 10, I did it. And it's literally like, we were a studio of 50 people and we did the global campaign for those phones for 3 years. So as soon as we became a part of Google, and the guys came in and said, well, you're our kind of R&D department right now, you can veer off and do whatever you want in the creative kind of filmmaking. I went like, okay, let's do virtual reality, let's do stereoscopic stuff, etc. The problem was, at that point, Oculus was barely about to hit development kit 1, and that was it, really, right? So there was nothing around. So the first thing I did is I grabbed a piece of wood and I deleted the video not to show you. That's unfortunate. Let's see if I can undo. Yes, I can. All right. I grabbed a piece of wood and put a mirror on it and then clamped it to my telephone and created a stereoscopic camera with my Nexus 5. So this is, I believe, the first test shot that I did with this. And this is literally a simple prism, one mirror going to the right, another one bouncing it back forward, and only happening actually on the right lens, the left is just see-through. So this was the first test, and you know, for a long time I assumed that, oh my god, this is gonna be so difficult to do, a stereoscopic attachment, you're gonna have to have this amazing precision, and I realized that it's actually not. You can literally build something like that in half an hour from the scrap material that was laying down around the studio, and then using Google Cardboard, watch it. We didn't have Google Cardboard, we had credit card. We will put a credit card in front of the telephone and just look at it very carefully. And that was working as a stereoscopic viewer. And human brain is a magnificent mechanism that fixes up a lot of mistakes that happen in the geometry. And, it became so silent. That happen in geometry and in the imperfections of the lens, and just teaches us to ignore it. So yeah, when we first strapped this construction and filmed some stuff, etc., it looked absolutely terrible, but after a few hours we learned to watch through it, and after a day or two it just became, you know, natural, and we had like our own VR things. And next thing we did with it is we mounted the phone on the robots and then had the HMD with the motion tracker, so as you moved your head, the robot was following, etc. It had terrible latency. We actually had somebody vomit on the studio floor, etc. But humble beginnings. The idea behind the whole project was not just to create a stereoscopic view, but to see. I was always fascinated by human perception and how do we see the world, etc. You know, being a digital artist and dealing with pixel grids, you know, and left top corner is always 0, 0, and bottom right corner is always the max X and Y, and the image gets displayed, you know, row after row. Thinking about how human eye and human brain perceive images when it's just an impulse of light going there randomly, and our internal circuitry figuring out what those points mean and how to make sense out of them, how to recognize patterns in them, was always fascinating to me. So I started thinking about the ideas of scale. There was this XKCD comic that suggested putting 2 cameras on the opposite sides of the football field to look at the sky and perceive clouds as actually human scale objects. So we wanted to do that, and to make it easier to understand, I don't know how familiar you are with this robot. It's like one of the staples of cheesy early Japanese sci-fi illustration. But now, if you think about it this way, this is what we built. Okay, so we took a motorcycle helmet and stuck a bar to it and put a GoPro on each end and jammed the viewer in front of the eyes. And the right GoPro was connected to the right eye, the left GoPro to the left eye. And what we were sure is gonna happen is that when you wear this device, you will feel like you're a giant because you'll have the perception of a person with the head that's 10 times bigger than yours. And no, you know, it's like we did tests first of all actually in CG. We rendered it, etc., and everything, the math checked out. It was supposed to work. We built it, we set it up, and no, the brain knows that no, you're not a giant. Basically, the reaction was you're looking through some device that's making it very weird, but no, you're not big. And we tried, you know, going on cranes. We asked some urban runners to like climb buildings with this thing on their face, etc. It just wouldn't change your perception. And that made me realize, for example, that how we perceive reality is not the same way we do in video games, where, you know, if you scale an object up or down, you can believe that you're a giant monster or a tiny microbe running around. No, we read minute details. I mean, if I look at this wall, I see the grain, and I know how the paint works, and I know what the size of that grain will be, and that gives me the context of the scale of that wall. I mean, if I look at this door, I can very easily estimate how far from me it is and how tall it is. And if I lay on the floor, it will still give me the same estimation. I won't suddenly think it's a gigantic door just because I changed my perspective. And apparently, even if you move one of your eyes, you know, far away from the head, you'll still manage to resolve it. We didn't get as far as doing the football field. We kind of stopped at 3 meters. But I don't know, I wish I could see somebody conclude that experiment and see what happens when you do the full scale. But on the medium scale, this was a big failure, but it was a cool experiment. And it helped me burn through another 1/4 of my talk. So after that, this got some interest because we were running through Google Campus with these weird contraptions in our head, etc. So we got a bunch of projects to do with real VR, and if you ever visit my website, they're all available for download, or you can watch them on YouTube, on Google Cardboard, etc. We did this thing where Google was for the first time launching retail, and you know, they always only existed in the virtual space. They were only a website or a service. So it was a big deal for them. It was crappy, the whole retail experience. I mean, to be honest, you know, it's not Apple Store. They didn't get like cool architects, etc. It was just a bunch of dudes decided, you know, we're gonna put some experiments in there for people to play with. But the problem was that their first retail presence was in UK. And the press that they wanted to address was in US. So all of us and my team to the rescue, we created the VR experience for them, where we filmed the replica of the shop on the stage using 360 cameras. We used jaunt cameras for that. I don't know how familiar you are with jaunt. And created kind of, you know, a small vignettes with the actress explaining what's happening and what are different places in the store, what you can do, etc. And then we shipped that to the press as a kit of a Google Cardboard, a Nexus phone, and the pre-installed app. And Google saved some money on plane tickets, so that was a cool thing. Then we did a video clip for Avicii, which was the first time we actually used Google Jump Camera. And that was a fun process because if you ever worked with alpha hardware, I don't mean alpha as in alpha male, I mean alpha as in duct tape and string, and it's barely working. One thing I can tell you about that experience is the only way to synchronize 16 cameras was to put a bucket. We literally went to Home Depot and bought a bucket. We put a bucket on the camera, and a camera flash inside, and we would flash several times so that we get white frames on all the cameras. So I don't know how many of you work in VR development on game engines, etc. But if you think about Unity or Unreal, you press one button and you export to VR and you're done, right? Cinematic VR is just such a mess. It's unbelievable. I mean, I think the simplest rig that you can think of is Ricoh Theta, which is, you have one probably on you, right? Which is just two cameras, but if you want like professional results, you have to go with 6 or 16 or 18 cameras, etc. Recently I've been demoing the new Nokia thing. Wonderful camera, looks beautiful, totally weird. Stereoscopy in front, stereoscopy on the right and on the left. No stereo in the back, no stereo on the top and the bottom. So no compositing software and no 3D software knows how to handle it, and you can't do any retouches and special effects. It's, yeah, you don't want to go there. Let's continue the story. This is one of those digressions that I was mentioning, and nobody threw anything at me. I'm very disappointed in your participation. Prismatic, that was kind of a cool project. Anyway, does anyone know at all anything that I did in the past? Not that I have such an ego trip, but just good. You're new to this. Cool stuff. So later on, if you want, I can show you Prismatic live. I have a Gear VR with me. This is a render of it. Let me see if I can get any audio running here. No, I can't.
You unplugged it.
Good call. Prismatic was my first project after I quit Google, and the idea was to create a previs for a live action piece that I'm working on, and do it on minimal budget possible. The compression is just terrible, but that's because my laptop is running on the battery at the moment. What I wanted to achieve is the feeling of infinity created with as small set as possible. So I'm just gonna forward a little bit in here so you can see what's happening. You get some lights, and it looks pretty cool. When you view it in stereo especially, you really can see the depth of the whole project. Now the cool thing is that this is actually how the whole thing works. So it's 3 mirrors and 9 LED strips. And the camera is positioned right in the middle of this. And as the things reflect, you get that illusion of the huge thing. And you know, first I wanted to do it in a game engine. I wanted it to be like full interactive, let you shimmy around. I don't know how many of you are game developers, but reflections in game engines, not the easiest thing to do. You can easily do a single reflection, double is possible, infinite reflections. Well, unless you work at Valve and you know how to do portals, kind of tough. So I said, okay, no problem. I'm gonna do it in 3D. My program of choice is Cinema 4D. No way of rendering 360 in Cinema 4D either, apparently, at that point. Again, we're talking about 7 months ago. So I built my own camera. So this is the rig I created in Cinema 4D. For some reason, the built-in cameras that they have for rendering images don't let you do 360, don't let you even do 180. They let you do, I think, 172 degrees. I don't know where that number comes from, but you can't do full 180. So basically, I put pieces of glass and use the refraction in the render, just as I would do my custom lenses for a real camera, and force them to capture the full 180. Now, I couldn't do the same with 360, so I created a rig that that does something like this. We have left eye camera and right eye camera. With those lenses, we have the IPD adjustment, so I can slide them left and right. And then I capture 360 super thin slices for every frame. Then additional patch on top of the bottom. Then I had to write my custom software that took those patches and stick them back into a playable footage. And then I could do the video. Now, fortunately, the nature of the video with the blinking lights allowed me to use a very cool trick that we used back in AutoFast when doing product photography. Now, we had a really, really shitty director of photography who was pretty good with cameras, really bad with lights. Didn't know how to light the product. And you know, Microsoft would come to us with the new Xbox and say, hey, you know, we need a cool back shot and the camera is gonna be swirling, you have those robotic cameras, we want the lights, etc. And it just looks terrible because the guy can't light it. So one of our techs came up with this concept of lighting everything in post. Because we had robots, we could repeat the identical motion around the object as many times as we wanted. So we would just light it with a single light at the time, shoot it, then turn off that light, turn another light on, shoot it again, and then in post we would just layer all those lights on top and we could adjust their intensity, adjust their colors, etc. and do really beautiful shots. So what I did in Prismatic is the same thing. I rendered, literally the whole video is 10 frames of render. I rendered one frame for each of the lights and then did all the blinking, etc. in post-processing. Now that was pretty fun, etc. You know, I built my own rig and I hacked the way the camera works, and I think I even have my, yes, this is my node-based espresso, you know, system where I can adjust all those things in the camera rig and the whole thing moves, etc. I was very proud of myself. As you can see, I still am. The video's finished. I want to show it to the world. How? I can't. I load it into After Effects. After Effects won't export it because it's too big. I load it into Adobe Premiere. Premiere won't export it. I try Final Cut. I try every software. Nothing wants to export it. So I go to internet. I search the forums. People say, oh, you should use Nuke. I look up Nuke license. Have to go for a walk when I see the price of Nuke license. Come back and start learning how to use FFmpeg. FFmpeg is okay, some of you already understand it. So the typical experience of a motion designer or director is you come to your cozy room, you sit in front of your Mac or your Windows, you move some sliders and you press the render button, right? And then the software does everything. Now in VR, this is what I have to deal with in order to compress Prismatic. So I had to learn how to do all the command lines, how to, you know, use all these weird settings, etc. But in the end, I mean, I figured it out, and actually I learned that there is a way to author ProRes on Windows, which was a very, very difficult process before. So that helped a lot. The video is ready. Where do I publish it now? There's no services. YouTube, that was before YouTube launched Stereoscopic 360. YouTube just does mono. Little Star, only mono. Vrideo, I don't know if you know that website, is the only one who can do stereo at that point. So I call up the guys from my old friends from YouTube and I say, guys, like I did this video, I want to publish it. Like, okay, we're not supposed to tell you, but in 1 month we're launching it. Why don't you send us the video? We're gonna kind of back end it, put it, you know, on the service, and it's gonna wait, and we launch it when the service goes live, etc. I call up Little Star. They're like, yeah, we have stereo, but like you need to give us the video, so I need to send a hard drive with this, you know, 200 gigabyte file. They have to encode it themselves because they have their own proprietary codecs. It's absolute insanity, and I'm talking about 7 months ago. When I worked on my most recent project, the Adobe software knows how to export it now. There's a plugin for After Effects that lets me put my Oculus on and just look around. I can download 3D renderers for my 3D software. Every single platform accepts. Actually, the new platforms are calling me up and sending me emails. Hey, you know, do you want to put your video on our service, etc. The thing is evolving at such rapid tempo. It's absolutely insane. And this is actually to look back to the whole thing, you know, doling out a lot of money for VR education 7 months ago, you would learn exactly this. You would learn how to do that. Knowledge which, it's fun to have and it's a cool anecdote to tell, but it's useless at this point. Because right now the software will do it for you. So, so that's Prismatic. And I have some links to the Prismatic video, but I don't think I'm online, so I can't show that to you. And Prismatic took me something like, I think around a month to create, maybe 3 weeks or so. So, you know, I had to solve all these problems, figure out how to do it, do the camera rigs and renders, etc. So, right after I finished, as I said, you know, we worked on the scene for Gravity. We shot all the scenes with Sandra Bullock, etc., using the robots. And I always wondered what that opening of Gravity, when she gets untethered and is tumbling in space, what would it feel in VR? Like, fortunately, right now you can just go to either Oculus Home or Steam, download Adrift, the video game, and try it out. That was before Adrift was released, so I was like, okay, let's go to NASA website. Let's download some textures of planet Earth. Let me see if I have. Okay, I just have a thumbnail for this. Let's download some textures of Earth, some depth maps, etc. Let's render the planet, put the camera around it, spin it, and see how it feels. So I did this experiment. It took me literally a weekend. And it took me probably an hour or two to make, and then the rest was the render time. Dropped it on YouTube, etc. Boom, it exploded. Like, so many views. Like, it totally surpassed Prismatic, and it drove me crazy because Prismatic was my baby. You know, I spent 2 weeks moving the little keyframes on the timeline, adjusting the color. Oh, you know, in this sequence I wanted to blink orange, and in here I wanted to blink green, and the depth has to feel this way. And this was like, literally, my only thing I wanted to learn from this project is how fast I can spin the camera to make you uncomfortable, but not make you vomit. And if you wonder, you can experience it after the talk. I hope I got the numbers right. I can't guarantee it. But you know, the reception was so much bigger than I ever anticipated, and it got me thinking that what actually matters to me may not be the same thing that matters to the audience. And this thing picked up so much because it is so much more familiar than a very abstract kind of, you know, weird mirror setup with a bunch of blinking lights, which people cannot refer to. In here, they can understand, hey, you know, I'm in space, I'm tumbling around Earth, this is my planet. So that got me thinking about how technicality often gets in a way of actually reaching and connecting with your audience. We tend to, I mean, I consider myself creative, but like, you see, I mean, I script, I do this stuff, etc. I am an engineer somewhere deep inside for sure. And we tend to get so fascinated with tech that we lose that connection, that human connection with making things that actually have people react and have people connect with the thing. So that will be something that I learned from this project. And I'm actually glad, because I thought it was, you know, just time wasted when I made it, and apparently it was one of the more valuable lessons that I wouldn't have taught myself otherwise. I have some more stuff. Okay, so the poll. This is my most recent project. It premiered it a month ago on all the major services. A week ago it got included in the John Showcase. Right now I'm working with Weaver to get it on their transfer platform. It's been shown on a number of festivals, Kaleidoscope picked it up, etc. I mean, it's really doing well. And This one was an exercise in letting go of the control. So, as many creatives, I'm a control freak. And because I come from the animation background, I tend to, as I said a moment ago, sit over my timeline and obsess whether, something should happen half a second sooner, half a second later. It was a big problem when I was making a jump to live action for the first time, because I would treat actors like puppets. I would, tell them, hey, no, you move this many meters to front or this many feet to front, and then you turn this many degrees. And